And I'm going to start with an acknowledgement of country. So welcome everyone. So my name is Bree Norton. I'm the co-chair of Aussie Way, and we're really excited to be a part of Get Online Week again this year. We've got some exciting stuff to show you as well. But I'm going to start with an acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm meeting today here in Canberra, and pay respect to the elders of the Ngunnawal Nation, both past and present. And I extend this respect to all Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander peoples in attendance today. If you would like to put in the chat where you're from, maybe your name, and introduce yourself, your role, and also who you pay your respects to. If it's in Australia or even overseas, we do sometimes get some international people joining us. Please go ahead and do that. As part of this session, we will be showing you little snippets of videos and then having a discussion, but we would love your questions. So feel free to put any questions as we go into the chat, and we'll take them back to to Ricky to moderate with our wonderful panelists here today for Get Online Week. Just a little bit about Aussie Way. We're a not-for-profit organisation. Feel free to support us through some kind of membership or join our mailing list. Ricky particularly does a wonderful job with our newsletter. We put jobs on there for digital accessibility professionals. And we are very excited to have a lot of professionals now. We've been running this for over a year, and it's just getting more and more exciting, and we're getting some wonderful experts and topics. We've just got a new one that came up today that we're going to do around local accessibility meetups. So keep an eye out for that, and yeah, join the newsletter or join Aussie Way particularly and support what we do. All right, so Ricky, I might pass over to you to do a little intro, and then you can introduce the two panelists that we've got here that you're moderating for.
Sure. My name is Ricky Onsman. I'll be the moderator for today, and I'm a principal content writer for TPGI, a US digital accessibility consultancy, but I'm actually based in a place called Corrimal, which is just north of Wollongong on the New South Wales south coast. As Bree said, please do put your questions into the chat. After each little section of set of videos, we'll be taking questions, and I'll be putting those to the two people who put these two together. And I'll ask now to introduce themselves. Kylie, would you like to just briefly introduce yourself?
Certainly. So I'm on the lands of the Toon-Gadigal clan of the Durham Nation, and same, I do pay my respects. My name is Kylie Pollock. I'm currently an accessibility manager at CBA, but any opinions expressed are my own and not representative of CBA. I'm also the founder of alleypals.com.au, where I have a blog and also offer some accessibility services. And I've been working in digital accessibility now for around 5 years, and I've been leaving with disability for about 12 now.
Thank you. And Scott.
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Scott Nixon. I would like to pay my respects to all Indigenous peoples right across the nation on whose land we meet and work each day. I have been vision impaired all my life. I have been working with computers for the better part of 40 years and have been a digital accessibility consultant for around about the past 15 years. I also work as an audio description narrator for television and film, and do a couple of odd jobs here and there in the accessibility space. I would like to welcome everybody to the panel today, and really hope that you get something out of what we're going to be presenting. Ricky?
Great. Thanks, Scott. And yes, we're very excited to be involved with Get Online Week again. We've done this once before, Scott and I, and it's terrific to be able to broaden it out and to include iOS and Android in our coverage this year. So with that, we might go to the first video. Bree, can you set that up for us?
Okay, here we go. Can you hear me now for my audio?
Yes.
Excellent. And then I'm just going to check that my share settings are set up. And you can see my second screen. Is it a black screen?
Yes, it is.
Excellent. All right, here we go. So here's our first video.
So when I get a new phone, the first thing that I do is I go into my settings and I scroll down until I can find the details for display. And I come in and I set this dark mode. So I find light mode really affects me when it comes to my migraines and my seizures. So I always set in dark mode. The other thing that I do is I select this eye comfort shield. So if I turn that off, you'll see all the colors are a lot more white. So it's kind of more blue light. Whereas if I turn it on, it's more of a yellow light, which works better for me. The next things that I do is I come in and I find my font size and my style. And you can see here I'm slightly above the average. So I think most people have it usually around these two. So I take it up to that third from the top, just to make it a little bit easier for me for reading that text. When I'm having a really bad day with my vision, I will increase this sometimes even all the way, just to make it a lot easier for me when I'm using my phone. So the next thing I do is I scroll down and I find my accessibility settings. So you can see they're down here. I come in here and I look for the vision enhancements. And if I come down on the vision enhancements, you'll see here I've got a high contrast keyboard turned on. So if I turn this off and just jump over to a text pad, you'll see this looks like the standard keyboard. Now, if I jump back and I then turn on my high contrast keyboard, what it does is it changes this to a brighter yellow, so it makes it a lot easier for me to see the different letters on that keyboard and to operate it. The other thing that's really important for me, because I am so sensitive to light, is I actually can't adjust the brightness of my phone down enough for it to be comfortable for me to read. So if I come further down, there is this extra dim option. I've currently got it turned off, but when I turn it back on, you can see suddenly it becomes a lot darker on the screen. So this extra dim actually allows your phone to go down below the standard Android settings. And so you actually get it a lot darker than you would get if you just adjusted the individual. Now, I'm going to turn that off for a second. Because this is one that I turn on and off a lot, I actually set up the accessibility button as a shortcut. So down at the bottom of my taskbar, I have this little man that looks like that's the accessibility button. And this is where I can add and use all of the accessibility features that I find are most helpful. So, when I'm doing my testing, I'm going to be doing some things with TalkBack. When I'm reading lengthy documents these days, I've got a bit of a processing issue. So listening to it and reading it makes it a lot easier for me as well. And then I have that extra dim, which is, the most important thing for me on my phone, because it makes a huge difference to how I can actually read and operate my phone. So I can really quickly toggle it on or off as I need from that shortcut menu.
All right, so I'm about to do a similar video with Scott and the iOS system and accessibility features. Now, this video is quite long, so we're only going to play the first few minutes, and then we'll come back and have the discussion. But you all should have links in your agenda document to those original videos now on YouTube with transcripts. So feel free to go and have a look at those in your own time. But we're just going to play a little bit more of this iOS with Scott, and then we'll come back and have a chat.
Hi, everyone. Scott Nixon here. I work with Aussie Way in digital accessibility, and I'm going to show you how you can set up your iPhone for VoiceOver. Now, at the moment, I have the VoiceOver settings set up on the phone already. Just a quick note, whenever you buy a new Apple device, be it an iPad or an iPhone, when you initially turn it on, a voice will ask you if you want to enable VoiceOver features. In this case, we're going to assume that you do, so all you have to do is take one finger and just tap it twice on the screen, just tap, tap, like that, and it will automatically set up VoiceOver for you. Now, what we want to do from here is we want to change some settings. So we're assuming that you have set up the iPhone or iPad. In this case, I'm using an iPhone. So we're assuming that you've got that all set up, but you want to make a few changes to the VoiceOver functionality. So we're going to look for the settings menu. Now I have the main screen up here. This is what we call the home screen. It has all the apps that you may have. I've set it up in my own personal way. So there are apps like Reddit and Prime Video, and all my video streaming services are on the front page really. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a one finger swipe to get the system working. Now I have all the sounds and everything turned on at the moment, and I also have VoiceOver running at a slower speed, so hopefully you'll be able to understand it. So we go like so, with a one finger swipe to the right. We're on messages at the moment, so swipe.
Calendar, Wednesday, August 14th.
And if you wanted to go back to messages, you one finger swipe to the left.
Messages.
Like so. Now you can do this to go to each individual app, or you can run your finger over the screen to where you think the necessary app may be. For example, I know that settings is on the second row on the right side of the screen, second from the end. So I would just go
Google.
Now you see, I've gone one row too far and I'm down on my Google search app. So I need to move my finger up, and you just slide your finger along the screen.
Settings, 2 new items.
To settings like that, and I have 2 notifications there. So we'll do it the other way, moving back and going to
Messages,
which is our top left hand app, and we'll swipe with our right finger.
Calendar, photos, camera, weather, clock, 16:16. Settings, 2 new items.
And there we are at settings. Now notice how after camera, when it moved down to weather, it went bonk. It gave the swipe sound, but it also gave it all like that. That means you've moved down to the next row of your available apps. They go 4 to a row on iPhones. It's much different on iPads, but you will be able to figure it out easily. So to open the settings menu, we do a one finger double tap. So tap, tap.
Settings.
Okay, so it's opened my settings menu and it's put us right at the top. So we want to swipe down and we need to find the accessibility menu. So
Bluetooth, heading.
no, what has happened here is it's left me in a menu I was in earlier. So that's okay. Don't worry about that, because you can always go to the top left-hand corner of any page.
Settings, back button.
Back button. Like that. It'll tell you what section you're going to go to if you hit that back button. So double tap.
Settings.
And it's got me back on the settings menu. I'm going to put my finger near the top of the screen.
Settings, heading.
And it's right at the top of the settings in the heading. So we're going to go down to accessibility, okay?
Search field.
You can search for anything in the settings menu in that field if you want, but we're just going to quickly, for the sake of time, swipe down until we find accessibility. So we're swiping with one finger to the right.
Dictate, Scott Nick, finish set, software, Scott's airplane mode, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, mobile, personal, notification, sounds, focus, screen, general, control, display, home screen, accessibility.
There we go,
button.
accessibility. Double tap.
Vision, heading.
And we're at the top, which is vision, which means these are settings for people with vision impairments. So we have
VoiceOver,
the VoiceOver
on
function.
button. Zoom,
We have
off button.
Zoom, which means you're able to use finger gestures like pinching your fingers on the screen to zoom text and change its size.
Display and text size button.
And also display and text size. Now we'll just go into that for a sec. So double tap.
Bold text, switch button, off.
So if you want the text to be bolder on the screen so it's easier for you to read, you can double tap that and it'll switch it on or off like so.
On, off.
Just with a simple double tap like that. Moving down.
Larger text, off.
Larger
button.
text, same thing, and you'll be able...
Larger accessibility sizes, switch button, off. Apps that support dynamic type will adjust to your preferred reading size below.
Now, dynamic type is a special feature. It's a little more advanced, so we're not going to cover that today. We're just covering the very basics. So I'm going to go back.
Larger accessibility sizes, switch button, off. Larger text, heading. Display and text size. Back button.
I have to go
Display
back.
larger text. Off button. Bold text. Switch button. Display and text. Accessibility. Back button.
To the main accessibility menu because we want to
Display
go
and text
to
size. Zoom.
VoiceOver.
VoiceOver. On
So-
button.
So we'll stop there. There's a whole lot of material there to watch later on YouTube about VoiceOver. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'll take it back to you, Ricky, and Kylie and Scott to discuss these first couple of videos. And hopefully you'll enjoy the kind of the animation and the aspects of how we generated the movement of these mobile devices. Thanks.
Thanks, Bree. Yeah, that was great, both Kylie and Scott. Very interesting stuff. Look, to people who are attending, if you do have any questions, do put them into the chat. But in the meantime, I'd be interested to know from each of you if there were any particular things that you felt as you explored the accessibility settings that you thought, I wish it could do this. Kylie, you first. Was there anything that stood out for you as like you wanted to be available but wasn't?
Yeah, for me, I think it really comes down to the shortcuts. So whenever I have to set up my phone, it takes me quite a long time to do that. And it doesn't, you know how you will set up when you buy a new phone, you can copy over, all of your files, and that's sort of a really instantaneous program. You plug it into the computer, you press a button, it copies all your files over. It doesn't copy all your accessibility settings. And so that means usually I'm sitting there with my Android device, spending about 10 minutes to try and find how to switch it on. And the auto dim, like that dim is very, very important to me. So usually in that 10 minutes where I'm trying to manage my phone, I'm actually getting really sick. And it's really difficult for me to use it. And so having that copy across when I'm using the other phone would just make my life so much easier. I wouldn't have to increase my text size. I wouldn't have to put on the fancy keyboard. I wouldn't have to do the extra dim. It would just be there for me.
Right, that's interesting. And Scott, was there anything that in the iOS settings that you wish was there that wasn't?
Really, it's a case of, Kylie took the words right out of my mouth. Being able to transfer those preferences from device to device would really be a great aspect, or even just having during initial setup of the phone, if you tap on wanting to have the devices, sorry, I'm just muting my audio for a minute there. So you can have the option to have basic accessibility settings go instantly when you tap to accept them, or even advanced settings or super advanced settings, which would bring it down to, for example, Kylie's level of need, being able to have that as a base point and then be able to work up from there, rather than coming on and having everything switched on and then having to bring it down to where you need it to. So that would be a really good feature. And also for me, I think the hierarchy of having the accessibility settings open and telling you exactly what they're going to do. It'll say display and brightness. Okay, someone who may have, this may be their first time on an iOS device or may experience cognitive issues or something, may not necessarily know what that means. So having a hint or an expanded explanation of what those settings may mean would be a benefit for sure.
Right. Yeah. I noticed too that at one stage you went into a page and it had retained the settings from the last time you opened that up. Is that a really frustrating thing?
It can be at times. Sometimes I'll quickly go in and change a setting on something and then go back out, and a couple of hours later I need to go and do something else, and I open it up and I go, wait a minute, this shouldn't be on that page. It should be on the main page.
Yeah.
So, that can be a little bit frustrating. But once you get the hang of it, it's very easy to extricate yourself from the situation back to where you need to be.
Yeah. And I guess there's that thing too of there are so many settings on each of the devices that you kind of, I guess after a while you get used to, I know where I'm going. But the first few times you kind of got to wade through an awful lot of settings to get to the ones you actually need.
Exactly. And it can get quite frustrating, but if you stick with it, if you give yourself some grace and go, okay, I know this is going to take me a while to set up and get used to, you'll be able to, find your own path and find your own weave of what works well for you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
One of the difficulties there, so because I work as a professional testing in the space, when you're testing, you need to be able to adjust the settings very quickly because you need to test on standard zoom, which I don't like to do because I usually need then magnifying glasses or something else to get around. And then you have to put it onto the higher level zoom to then check on that and make sure that your app is working correctly. Then you have to go back onto your light mode and to your dark mode. So you're doing a lot of these changes to your settings in quick succession. And I got to admit, it's not an easy thing to do because you've got to go through, multiple screens to find different areas of doing it. In iPhone, I found it's a little bit more straightforward than it is in Android when you want to do that really quickly, especially around the font sizes, because there's 3 different ways that you can set zoom on font within Android. And if I set it one way, my apps just don't work. And if I set it the other way, it makes everything big rather than just the text. So, if I'm watching a video, I want that in high def. I want to make sure it's crisp and clean. I don't want to zoom in on it. But, if I'm just navigating your web app, if I'm using, a game or, I'm doing something like paying my water bill, I need to be able to see the text larger, but I don't need the rest of, the rest of it being larger. It doesn't worry me as much, but I don't need it.
Right, right. Breeze slipped a question in here. How different do you find setting accessibility on a mobile versus a computer or laptop? What's easiest to set up and use? Maybe you go first, Scott.
For me, I find the phone setting setup process far more user friendly than setting something up with a laptop. For example, I use iOS devices, so Apple devices for my phone, my TV, and my iPad, but I use Windows for my PC. The setup for that using accessibility software, no matter what software you use, is always very, very intricate, very, very complicated, and can get quite overwhelming and frustrating at times. Being able to set it up on a new system with the way things are constantly changing in that space. I throw no shade towards the Windows organization at all, but it just means that having to catch up and having to constantly change things with initial setups can be quite frustrating. So I personally find that using iOS devices wherever possible is the preferable, just because it's so, in my opinion at least, user friendly.
Right. What about you, Kylie?
Yeah, I got to say the same. I use my mobile for everything, and I find it's easier to find those settings. So again, I use a Windows machine. Some of the adjustments that I use on my Windows machine is a larger mouse pointer. So everyone gets shocked when I'm sharing screen and they see that my mouse pointer is about 2 to 3 centimeters large and it's in bright yellow, because it makes it easier for me, and it actually makes it easier when I'm presenting to people as well. And so everyone always asks me about that. But every different version and every upgrade that you get of minor versions with Windows, they change it.
Right.
So trying to find your pointer size, trying to find your text size, all of that is a real challenge, and it moves. So I always have to go to the search function, and we all know the search function doesn't always work because it goes out to Google if it doesn't match. And so I find that extremely difficult. Whereas with Android, my mobile phone, it tends to be a lot more locked down. You don't see a massive shift between each version. And the text zoom on mobile is just a lot better. It's a lot crisper and cleaner. With Windows, I've corrupted the machine a few times and had to contact the help desk, because when you increase text zoom versus other zoom, it can play havoc with your desktop. So the desktop screen that you have, and icons disappear and things just go away, and it drops I've had situations where it's dropped the size of my screen to a quarter of my screen, and then the rest of it doesn't work because somehow it's corrupted in the settings.
Right, right. And I guess related to that, Sharon asked a question. Can you recommend any resources to help us learn more about mobile accessibility testing? You don't have to come up with a full list right now, but maybe if we can get from you some resources that you use, that we can share those with the attendees.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, you go ahead, Kylie.
Sorry to interrupt. We have kind of a deadline, but we have some time for questions at the end. So maybe that question we could leave to the end, and we could
True.
kind of come up
Sure,
with some
fair
other
enough.
links for that, and then we can go back
Sure.
to the questions that are relevant. I hope that's okay with you, Sharon. But we will try and put some more mobile accessibility testing resources in there for you. Shall I
Yeah,
go
let's
to
go
the
to the next video.
All right, we're going to look at the ABC iView. Thank you for that, and I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, I think I've got it ready. Just because we're on a time schedule, and we know that we will put some resources at the end as well. All right, so I haven't shared my screen yet. Can you see my black screen?
Yes.
Yep,
Yeah.
excellent. All right, so this is the first one about using ABC iView on the Android.
So one of the things I do when I'm testing is actually testing with voice control systems. So these can be really useful for people that have limited mobility to be able to hold and navigate through their mobile phone. So I do have this set up as a shortcut. It doesn't come packaged with Android directly, but it is downloadable from the Play Store. So if I come to my accessibility shortcuts, I have voice access set on here, and when I click that, it brings up this little blue button. Now, when I click that blue button, it's going to start taking input from my voice unless I tell it to stop listening. So by default, whenever I'm talking, it's going to be trying to interpret that and take the action that I need. So I'm going to turn that on. Tap Chrome. Tap Search. 1. ABC iView. Tap ABC iView. 2. Tap ABC iView. 5. Tap Search. 2. Stop listening. Okay, so I've temporarily paused that. So what you may have noticed is when I said tap search, it didn't do anything. So what it was trying to do is tap the icon that's called search, but it didn't bring up the search field. Now, there's a few different reasons that could be caused. It could be that the button itself is not named, or the button itself is not named search. So having no other idea on what it would be called, I then have to start navigating by numbers rather than navigating by the names of components. So I'm going to now start up voice control again. So start listening. And sometimes it has difficulty with that control. So I am just going to press it and start it again. Show numbers. Tap 14. Tap 13. Austin. Hide numbers. Tap Austin. 3. Tap watch episode 1. Tap login to watch. Tap email. Tap 1. So here you can see I do have a text zoom on, and sometimes that causes confusion with the websites. So it actually gets off placed. So sometimes it will show me the numbers that aren't actually in the same location. Now, I'm not going to log in because I don't have an account, but I hope that gives you a bit of an idea on how someone could navigate using voice control systems.
All right, I'm going to stop there. There's also a wonderful demonstration of Kylie using the TalkBack on Android as well that you can watch later. I'm now going to go to Scott's version of ABC iView, and then we'll come back and have a discussion. And I've already got other questions again ready to go, and I'm sure everyone else on the call has as well. But it really goes to show how structure is so important in your design, for how those kinds of things come up. And have a question for you about that, Kylie. But here we go for Scott's version of ABC iView on the iOS.
Now, assuming you've become basically proficient with working on an iPhone, what we want to do now is watch a program of audio description, which, of course, as many of you hopefully should know, is where action and visuals on the screen are described during non-dialogue points in the show. So if there's a quiet point, a voice will come over and tell you what's happening on the screen. Someone's making a facial expression, action's happening, they'll describe it to you whenever possible. ABC iView app has a lot of audio described programs from the ABC, stuff like Great Australian Dramas, comedies, right through to some great British programs as well. We're currently, as you can see, on the main page of the ABC iView app. We are trying to find a great Australian comedy series called Austen. So what we need to do is we need to narrow down our search parameters to shows with audio description. To do that, we need to go to the top left-hand corner of the page here where it says
Show menu.
Show Menu. Double tap.
Show menu.
Then we're going to
Close
go
menu
down
button.
and we are going to find the programs A to Z section. So we swipe with one finger to the right.
Home. But watch live. Channels. Categories. Programs A to Z.
A to
button.
Z. There we go.
Show menu button. Chromecast not available. But search button. My account. Programs A to Z. Heading selected. All programs. Tab 1 of 3.
Now that's got every program that's available. There's, a couple of hundred, but we want to narrow it down to audio description. So we swipe right with one finger to
Audio descriptions. Tab 2 of 3.
audio descriptions. Double tap.
Selected. Audio descriptions.
And that has
Tab 2
now
of 3.
narrowed down our search. So
Closed captions.
closed
Tab 3 of
captions
3.
are also available and can be played in conjunction with the audio description. So if someone has hearing issues, they can have the closed captions on the screen while you're listening to the audio description. So we're going to keep going down.
Section index. Adjustable.
Section index means you can swipe your finger up and down, and that would take you from section A to B, C, D. So shows that begin with an A, begin with a B, begin with a C, and so on. You'll see that sort of thing throughout the iPhone architecture when there are large lists of things to be found. So I am going to continue swiping down with one finger, going right.
Audio descriptions. Heading. Audio description is an audio track that narrates visual representations on screen. Find out more in Support and FAQ, Audio Descriptions, link.
Now you see that's a new piece of information that they've actually added to the app recently. I didn't know that was there. So if you wanted to learn more, you could tap on that and it would take you to a page with more information about audio descriptions and a few examples as well. But we're looking for the show Austen, so we're going to keep going with our right finger swipe.
Cap A, Head, The Adventures of Paddington, button. After the Party, button. Aftertaste, button. Alva's World, button. American Sniper, button. Andy's Dinosaur Adventures, Annika, button. Auntie Donna's Coffee Cafe, Austen, button.
Austen, there we go. And we double tap.
Austen, back button.
It's taken us back to the top right-hand corner, top left-hand corner of the page with the usual back button that it has. And we want to swipe through and we want to make absolutely sure that this program does have audio description. So we are going to go down.
Chromecast not available. Search button. My account. Austen. Audio description available. Genre. Comedy. Drama. Feel good. All episodes. Heading.
Now you see, when a show is audio described on the ABC iView app, that line will always be there, audio description available. You do have to look out for some shows that have audio description available on some episodes, that means that there may be, 4 or 5 episodes with and 2 or 3 without. Some of the shows are a little bit hit and miss with their audio descriptions. So we're going to keep going down.
Share this show button.
You can share it with a friend.
Add to watch list
You can
button.
add it to a watch list, which means you've got shows that you can watch and just go to the watch list page and pick the one you want to watch. I want to watch the next episode of Austin, or I want to watch an episode of Bluey with my grandkids, and it has audio description on that too, with a lot of the Bluey episodes. Nearly all of them now, actually. But we want to play this first episode.
A best-selling, but recently cancelled, children's author has a meltdown when approached by Austin, a neurodivergent 20-something claiming to be his son. He then realizes that embracing the young man may be the path to redemption.
And you see, it gives you a description of the program.
More details button.
More information, which would include cast and so forth.
Series 1, Episode 1, audio description available, closed captions available, PG for parental guidance for people aged under 15 years. Within hours of best-selling author Julian Hartswood being cancelled for reposting a white supremacist, he discovers he has a neurodivergent son called Austin. Meanwhile, Julian's wife and work partner, Ingrid, calculates the Austin back button.
We're just going to keep it there because there may be some spoilers in there after that point. So we've just taken it back to the top left-hand corner of the page. Now, where it was there, when it said Series 1, Episode 1, if you double-tapped on that, it would start playing the episode. Of course, for copyright reasons, we can't do that part right now. But if you have audio description set up on your phone, on your device, be it iPhone or iPad, the audio description would play automatically. And knowing that it would play, you hear a bing, bong, bing that plays at the start of all ABC iView programs that have audio description. To activate audio description, simply go to the accessibility section we discussed earlier, into vision settings, into audio, and click audio description to on. So that is how you get audio description on the ABC iView app. Any questions?
Excellent. Well done. Back to you, Ricky.
Yeah, that's a very interesting demonstration there. I know that this is purely about iView. In your experience, how does iView rate in these terms for accessibility compared with other providers like Netflix or other streaming video providers? Kylie.
Yeah, so from my side, I actually quite find iView good. I don't usually watch iView on my mobile phone. I'll be honest about that. So usually it's on my TV. And what I found is there is a lot more on ABC that will have, any kind of trigger warning, any kind of flashing light warning. You don't get that as much. I found on Netflix, I only used it for a small period of time. It's sort of not at all on Amazon Prime. So because I have PTSD, that I love trigger warnings. But for actually navigating around, I found that iView is pretty good. I haven't had serious concerns. I have had issues with the ABC website though. So when they did a big overhaul, shortcuts and things I used to use, and I think I've seen a message there saying someone feels like that's the hardest way possible to pull up something in iView. It may be, but that's what we know. Right? If we've tried it, we've done it before, we know that's going to work. So that's kind of the most important thing to me is the consistency. And I find with other tools, they kind of change a lot.
What about you, Scott?
For purely accessibility reasons, for the fact that it gives you a detailed A to Z list of audio described product, will tell you that some episodes are described and some aren't, and you can go through and find out which episodes are described and which aren't. ABC iView is definitely the front runner when it comes to accessibility. I use pretty much all of the streaming apps, and they do a very good job of telling you where audio description is and where audio description isn't. But just for Kylie's benefit, I will note that Disney Plus, on all their programs, when you open a program and open its page, it will have trigger warnings for flashing light sequences and things like that. They always have them listed in there at the top of the page. But yeah, for sure, ABC iView is the front runner when it comes to being able to go in and quite easily find what is accessible and what isn't. With the other ones, it's very much a case of you've got to go, digging a heck of a lot more.
Right. Yeah, you'd kind of hope so with, ABC being a public broadcaster, that they, take their responsibilities in that regard seriously.
Thanks for the info, Scott. That might convert me to Disney Plus. I've been when they got Doctor Who, it hurt.
Yeah.
No,
So
they definitely they put warnings on the top of Doctor Who saying flashing light sequences are difficult for photosensitive viewers.
Fantastic.
Right. This also makes me think about comparing it to the previous videos that we've just seen. Do you think that the balance is right between accessibility settings that you can personalize on your device and accessibility features that are made available through a service provider like iView? Kylie, perhaps.
So it depends on what you're using. So for me, because I do adjust text size, I don't like burnt in captions or what they call open captions. So on iView, you've got there as closed captions and it's all okay, but other tools, and it's happening much more with things like Facebook now. Everyone's putting in these fancy open captions, and what that means is they're on the screen all the time and you can't change them. And some of those I just can't see because I'd normally put them larger or turn the color different. So that's sort of some features that I've seen that are better on my device versus what they're providing me.
And Scott?
I would say for me personally, being totally blind, the balance is pretty good with the majority of the services that are available out there. It's very much a case of when, say, an app like ABC iView wants to make itself available for purchase through the App Store, there are certain conditions that they have to meet in terms of accessibility. There's like a baseline of accessibility that they have to meet in order for it to function correctly. Now, I personally don't use the voice command functions which are available through iOS devices. I know people who do, and they've told me that it's pretty successful. It can be a little bit hit or miss, but the chances of that happening maybe 10% of the time things go wrong in that aspect. But for me personally, the balance is pretty good.
Okay, and just harking back to the accessibility settings, there's a question from Dominique asking, do you have to redo the settings every time there's a software update?
No. If you're using the same device and you bring a new software update into the fold, the settings you have follow through into that new update. For example, we recently went from iOS 17 to iOS 18, and my accessibility features stayed exactly as they were. And
Right.
when I went back into accessibility features, there were actually some new ones, new voices to use, a couple changes to the architecture and hierarchy of things. But yeah, the settings you have follow through to the next version.
Right. And Kylie, do you know if that's the same with Android?
With Android, yes, I've had the same thing, so it carries over. With Windows, I have not. So most of Windows have been okay for me, but a lot of people set like a night mode. So once you get to, say, 7 o'clock, it reduces blue light, it changes the color of the screens a little bit so that it doesn't affect your circadian rhythms and it helps you sleep. Unfortunately, that one always toggles off for me. So I don't have it set to toggle on at a particular time. I have it set all the time because I need the yellow rather than the blue. And every time I do an update with Windows, that gets toggled off. But a lot of the other settings are fine.
Okay. And going back to like iView, just as an example of the experience, was there a point in either of your experiences where, with iView in particular, where you just went, oh, look, just forget it. This is just too much hassle? Kylie,
Sorry.
start.
Yeah, look, no. I've actually, because I'm not using a screen reader to do it all the time, I haven't run into an issue. I found it pretty straightforward and it works on my old crummy TV that isn't all that smart. So that's the main thing that I needed.
Right. Scott?
For me, iView was easily the most pleasant of experiences when I first started using it, and whenever they do an upgrade, I tend to find it to be the most sensible upgrades that can be done, and I find I get around them very easily. For me personally, I experience anxiety, and going through a new program or a new system or changes to a system can be an anxiety trigger for me. So what I do in those cases is I instigate what I call the rule of five. I give it 5 minutes to be able to do what I want it to do. Otherwise, I've just got to step away. But in the case of iView, I've never had to invoke the five.
Right, right. That's interesting. There's a comment there that from one of the attendees saying that Apple TV has, in their opinion, a much better interface for a lot of apps.
Yes and no. For example, the ABC iView app audio descriptions do not work on the Apple TV. I don't know why that is. It's a problem between iView and the Apple Corporation. So that's their deal to work out. But I tend to find some of the apps can be a little bit more difficult to use. But for example, something like YouTube, the iOS app is awful. Invoking the rule of five there is practically mandatory. But their iOS app is far more user friendly for the Apple TV. So yeah, I can see where that person is coming from. But it really is a matter of how persistent you are and how willing you are to deal and compromise with changes. And I apologize if my volume's changing a little bit. We've got a bit of rain here.
Oh, that's okay. Any comment there, Kylie? Have you used Apple TV?
iOS, so no, I don't use Apple TV.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, maybe we should move on to the next pair of videos. Are we good for that, Bree?
Yep, all ready to go. And just so now I've shared a link to the agenda document that we use for our arts professionals, and I've started a resource section at the bottom and put some links to some of the mobile accessibility. Everyone should have access to that to view. If you are an Aussie Way committee member, you can edit. So we will add other things in there as we need to, as we can, and we'll put some of this information up on the Aussie Way website under our mobile testing section. So, all right, let me share my next video. And you can see my black screen.
Yep.
All right, we're going to go with Scott's first, and this is using the Coles, doing a Coles shop. So here we go.
Online shopping is huge these days. You can get everything from couches and other types of furniture right down to your everyday grocery needs delivered straight to your door. One of the major supermarket chains, Coles, has a really great app that works very, very well with VoiceOver. So we're going to have a little look at it right now. As you can see, we're on the main Coles screen. We're just going to have a little search around first before we go to exactly what we're doing. So,
search for products, search field.
Right at the top, there is a search
Options
field
available.
where you can search for all the products that a particular store has available. So we're going to swipe with our right finger and just have a little look around first.
Scan a barcode button.
You can scan a barcode of a product you have and it'll pop up and you could order more of it, for example. If you had a packet of cheese that you particularly liked, you could scan the barcode on it, it'll come up and you can say order more.
Log in or sign up, place orders, save lists, link liberize and more button.
Okay, now that's where you would sign up to use the app and have things delivered. You would have to provide your credit card information, your home address, things like that. It's all very secure and very safe, so don't worry about it. We're not going to do that right now, though.
Browse products heading.
Okay, we're just going to have a little browse around.
View all button. Bought before. Item 1 of 15 button. Specials. Item 2 of 15 button.
Okay, and so you can see stuff that you bought before, specials that they currently
Meat and
have.
seafood. Item 3 of fruit and vegetables. Item dairy, eggs and fridge. Item 5 of bakery. Item 6 of 15. Button.
Going through all the different items that are available in the different sections of the supermarket. But what I really want to do right now is buy a loaf of bread. So
Dairy.
I
Search for
am going to go back up into that
Search
top
field.
left-hand corner,
Actions
double tap on
available.
the search
Search
bar,
field. Search field is editing. Search
and
for
type in
products. Cap B. Cap R. 5 suggested S. E. A. D. 5 suggested searches.
okay, so bread, and it's giving me some search options. So I'm going to go back to the
Search
top here.
field is editing. Bread.
That's where I
Character
am.
mode. Insertion point at end. Clear text button.
If you made a mistake and want to clear it, you can do that.
Cancel button.
Cancel the search.
Suggested searches. Heading. Bread button.
Okay, and bread. So that's what I wanted. So I'll double tap on that.
Selected. Bread. App tip.
Okay.
Add to trolley in one tap. Heading. Change the amount with plus or minus. Close button.
Now those little tips will come up in a lot of different apps and are very, very helpful. You can turn them off if you want, but I would advise not when you're first starting out because it can give you some very useful information. But we're going to close that window for now.
Bread. Search field.
So we're back at the top.
Cancel. But filter and sort button.
Okay, you have an ability to sort them by size, price, product name, that sort of thing, but we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to flick through.
Specials filter button.
Specials. Okay, there is a blank spot there. That is unusual and can happen with some apps. It does mean that there is something there, but the VoiceOver program just isn't picking it up. Very unfortunate, and actually something I will report to them.
Tip top the one white sandwich bread 700 grams. Item 1 of 310. $4.40. 63 cents per 100 grams. Every day. Actions available.
Okay, so we've got the tip-top bread there. There are 310 results. It told us that. And it gives us the price and per gram as well, which is very, very good. Now, actions available means that you can use your finger to swipe up and down, and it will tell you the different options that you can have with this particular item, such as
Add to favorites.
you can put it in your favorites list,
Save to list.
save to a grocery list,
Add to trolley.
instantly put it in the trolley,
Activate default.
and activate means you would open a extra page for that particular item. So we'll do that. Double tap.
Selected. Slide 1 of 4. Product image slideshow for tip top the one white sandwich bread 700 grams. Every day. Double tap to zoom.
Okay,
Actions available.
and there are actions there such as
Zoom image. Double tap to slide 4 of 4. Slide 3 of 4. Slide 2 of 4. Selected. Slide 1 of 4.
okay, we've got some lovely pictures of bread there apparently. I can't see them. I don't know whether you can. So we'll just skip through a little bit on the page here and see what other things are available with right finger swipe, with right swipe.
Tip top the one white sandwich bread 700 grams $4.40. Every day. 63 cents per 100 G. Tip top the one white sandwich bread 700 grams. Add to favorites, but save to list button.
Okay, it's give you another way to add things to your list and to your favorites.
Actions available.
Okay, once again, there is a link there which doesn't have anything on it except the action. So let's just do a quick flick up and down.
Add to trolley. Activate default. Add to trolley. Activate default.
Okay, so we're not going to worry about that right now.
Soft and tasty loaf of Tip Top. The one is high in fiber and has the added benefits of essential vitamins and minerals.
Okay, that's just giving you all the information about the bread. So that is very, very simply how you would access the Coles app, which you have to download from the App Store. As I said, you need to create an account for yourself if you want to buy anything. And as you're setting up the app, it will actually ask you to locate your local store. So if you know the name of the shopping centre or area that your main Coles supermarket is in, you'll be able to select that by putting in your suburb or your postcode as well. So,
all right. Thanks, Scott. That's great. Okay, we'll now go to a short demonstration from Kylie. The rest of Kylie's will be a talkback that you can go and watch on YouTube. Again, we've got the transcripts up there as well, so you can watch that in your own time. But here we go with Kylie's Android experience of Coles Shop.
Tap Chrome. Tap Search. 1. Coles Supermarket. Show numbers. Tap 19. Tap 44. Hide numbers. Tap Search. Tap Bread. Scroll down. Scroll down. Scroll to bottom. Scroll down. Tap Add Wonder White Bread. Tap Continue. Tap Email. 3. A11ypals@outlook.com. Tap back. 1. Tap Continue. Tap Continue. Tap Save. Tap Continue. Copy 856631. Tap one-time code. 3. Eight 856631. Tap Verify and log in. Scroll down. Tap Don't Ask Me Again. Tap Close. 2. Scroll down. Add Tip Top the one white. Show grid. Tap 6. Hide grid. Tap Close. 2.
All right, we'll leave it there. As I said, the talkback is on there as well, and the YouTube recording. Back to you, Ricky.
There's a quick question for you here, Kylie, about what's the name of the voice control app that you're using?
So there's 2, and I'm going to have to check my phone right now because I always swap them around. So there's Voice Access and Voice Control. It is inbuilt to iOS, but for Android, you do need to download it from the Play Store. So Android is Voice Access. So if you go onto the Play Store and you look for Voice Access, it'll be there, published by Google. Once you download it, you can just do exactly like I showed. If you are using Android, it's much easier. So iOS has a lot of things that need to be done it doesn't do partial matches. So you would have seen there some of I would say what I thought the button was called and it would invoke it. So if a button name, had, Kylie Marie Pollock on it and I said tap Kylie, it will work on Android. In iOS, you have to say Kylie Marie Pollock. And if you don't, and they haven't set up any accessibility features for it to pattern match, then it won't. So you spend quite a lot of time yelling at your phone, thinking that it's not understanding you. That's also why I have turned on the commands. so that when I say it, I can see it. Because even with Android, I've configured it to my voice, so I don't have to change it a lot. But you probably noticed when I said hide, I had to hide rather than just saying hide. Because if I say hide, it gets it completely wrong and it doesn't understand what I'm saying. And then also clear. So you have to talk much more clearly. Otherwise, you just put on an American accent and then it works.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's also interesting, and I'm sure I'm speaking for all the attendees here, in the two different ways of accessing the shop. One using voice commands and being able to see the result, and the other depending on the device speaking to you.
And even just if you use the web to the app, I would like to add that. So I always use the web where I can rather than the apps, because the web, I can usually have the text increase. It's usually much better handled, where a lot of apps, they lock that down. Or if it does increase, it affects how you can use it.
Yes. And as someone pointed out too, that a lot of this actually working depends on how it's coded, that if it's semantically coded or not. Do you ever run into situations where you get unexpected results because you were expecting one thing to happen and it doesn't, or you reach a black spot, like Scott was describing, or something completely unexpected happens? Scott?
It's not so much finding something completely unexpected happens. It's finding those blank spots, buttons that aren't labeled correctly, things that say read more and you open it and it doesn't read anything more. That sort of thing that can get very frustrating. Although I have found in the past 2 or 3 years, the frequency of those events is becoming much smaller, simply because a lot of these big organizations, such as Coles, do a lot of accessibility research and do reach out to the disability community and get people with lived experience to come in and actually test the product, which is why when I heard that blank spot in the demonstration there, I knew that contacting Coles wasn't going to be an exercise in utter futility, because I have contacts in there from previous work who will see my email and go, wait a minute, we do actually have a problem here. So they do proactively go and fix them. You don't get that with a lot of places, but when you do, you have to cultivate those relationships and make sure that you give them good press, because everyone likes a pat on the head every now and then. And if a business is getting good promotion, it's getting more customers in, it's going to keep doing what you want them to do.
Right. And in your explorations of these, do you detect a difference in attitude, like based on the ABC being a public broadcaster and providing a public service, as opposed to Coles wanting you to buy something? Kylie?
There's definitely a change in attitude. So I've done consulting. I haven't worked directly with Coles or iView. So, but I've obviously, like I said, I work for CBA. I work with banking systems. So on top of accessibility requirements, every industry have their own industry requirements as well, and that does impact along those lines.
Scott?
For me, it's definitely a case of when it's a public service like a bank or a utility company, the tax office, maybe it's the iView, they do tend to follow, the lines of, well, we need to make this accessible because it is governmentally mandated. When it is a for-profit company like your, like your Amazons, your Coles, stuff like that, it can be a little bit more hit and miss. Amazon, for example, have one of the single worst setups online and via their app for accessibility. They do the bare minimum of work. It is always frustrating as hell. The rule of 5, which I explained earlier, is absolutely essential in cases like that, because there's just an overload of information and you get really frustrated really quickly. And customer service, particularly when it comes to accessibility, is virtually non-existent. But then you have a company like Coles who realize that if they're going to give people the accessibility that they need to be able to use the website correctly, We're going to use it. We're going to tell other people to come and use it. We're going to give them money. Places like Amazon, they literally leave hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table every year because they don't cater to the accessibility market the way they should.
Right, yeah. And do you think it would be useful if, particularly for profit services, you could compare them on how accessible they are, so that there were, in effect, in the same way that Choice produces ratings for, cost efficiency and energy use, if products like that had accessibility ratings that you could compare and say, well, these ones are better because they all produce, every single video has audio description, whereas on this provider, only some of them do.
I do think it's a good idea in theory. In practice, it's a case of being able to convince the organization that making things more accessible for a wider range of people is actually going to result in a greater profit margin for them. Really, in a lot of cases, as nihilistic as it may be to say, a lot of companies look at the disability sector as the absolute last thing they need to worry about. Right. And even if there's public naming and shaming going on via lists or rating systems or stuff like that, it may still not necessarily ring the bell that is needed to get the job done.
Right. What's your views on that, Kylie?
Yeah. Sorry. Could you repeat the question there? I'm having a little bit of a...
So with providers like these and products in general, would it be useful to have, in the same way that you might have energy ratings that you can compare from one product to another, to have accessibility ratings that you could compare?
Yeah, look, definitely. Whether it's digital or physical environments as well. I think it would make it a lot easier for people to decide what works for them, because everyone has their own unique needs, right? I choose to shop at the IGA because Woolworths and Coles have a similar physical presence in that they've got white floors and fluorescent lighting. So 10 minutes is kind of my max. Same thing with online. I 100% agree with Scott that Amazon is terrible, really, really bad. I have stumbled on that one quite a bit. So yes, knowing what other options that I could be using instead would be extremely helpful for me to make the right decisions on operation. The only thing I would say is there is one worse than Amazon, and that's Ticketmaster.
I felt that in my soul.
Yeah. And if you've ever tried to use Ticketmaster with a screen reader, and not only do you have a set time that you need to do it, and everything's disappearing and half the buttons don't work and you can't see the seating chart, then you will get blocked by their bot blocker. So some people mightn't be aware there's two different types of captcha we use these days. So, you get the captcha, which is click these buttons so that you know that you're human, which we all hate, but it is what it is. And then there is another captcha that looks at how you're using the website or to determine whether or not it thinks you're a bot. And I believe that also happened on one of the videos. So I'm not sure if that was cut, but it may be in the longer videos. I did trigger the bot, and so it wouldn't let me place ordering and things like that.
Right.
So yeah, Ticketmaster you use as a combination of the two, and it's not fun.
Okay. And going back to the specific example of the supermarkets, we have a question from Chades about, if you had allergies, nut, dairy, and gluten, is there a way for you to access information about the ingredients so you don't buy something that you can't eat?
Yes, the majority of, if not all, I personally haven't used the Coles app frequently recently, but I did have, when I was setting up to record these videos, I did a little spin around, and yes, it will give you ingredients lists, and sometimes, straight up warning, this product contains,
Right.
that can be allergic. And I do believe that I think it's Coles or possibly Woolworths do actually have a filter where you can say, okay, I want bread, but it needs to be gluten-free. Or, you need to make sure that a product is nut-free, and you can actually have that filter. So when you tap it, it filters out all the items that could be detrimental.
Right, right. Is that something you found as well, Kylie?
I don't do my shopping generally online. So like I said, I have a great little
Sure.
IGA. So I shop there just because I don't like to support when their premises are inaccessible to me. I don't really want to use them online either.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
There's a question here from Kelly. Is there any recommendations about which versions of VoiceOver and TalkBack you should include in testing? She's assuming that not everyone will have the same versions, or should we assume that everyone is likely to have the latest version?
Kylie, that's more your area
What do you
for
think,
testing.
Kylie?
Sure. So iOS, you're going to be forced into certain versions. Your tech will stop working. You can't download the new app. It's a lot more locked down than Android is. Apple's always been like that. So testing on the latest version with Apple does make sense. Usually you can only get like 2 behind, if I remember correctly, before they cut you off and the app stopped working. If you've used things, shopping, banking, insurance, any of those, they're going to try and keep up with the latest tech because it allows them to have more accessible implementations. So usually you're going to kind of be forced up that route at some point. When it comes to Android, when I do my own testing, I prefer to use older devices because you're not forced into the upgrade path. You can stay on older devices for a much longer period of time. And what you also have to factor in is that a lot of people with disabilities won't be buying the latest tech all the time if they don't have to, because it costs a lot. People with disabilities, unfortunately, even in Australia, still are very underrepresented in the workplace. So, more than 50% of people don't have full-time employment when they have disabilities. So I always try and take that into account. If someone tells me that an Android phone has to be on the latest, I do question.
Yeah. I do a lot of testing myself for the research that I write for TPGI. I have a little device lab set up, and I tend to have the latest version, but also the most popular version. So when Windows 10 moved to Windows 11, I had Windows 10 on one device, Windows 11 on another. And Windows 11 has better accessibility than Windows 10 does, but more people use Windows 10. So I had to test with both. Yeah, that's interesting stuff. There's a follow-up on that, and how important the site is it that the site is coded or structured to manage new updates to an app? Scott, what's your thoughts on that?
Vital, basically. If a website or an app is structured in a way where updates are going to be brought in and have a similar look, a similar feel, a similar flow to what the previous version was, if it's set up to make sure that that happens, it's great, it's wonderful. But if an app comes in or a site comes in and completely changes itself overnight. For example, we mentioned before about the excuse me, Kylie mentioned before about the ABC's recent complete change to the look of their websites. I, for myself, listen to audiobooks on an app called Audible, which is through Amazon. And as we know, Amazon aren't always fun. Whenever they change their app, it can be completely altered overnight, and you have to learn a completely new system. So the better a system is coded, so it can have a nice flow from one update into the next, the better off it is, because you really do run the risk of having user drop off if the system completely changes and people become frustrated or anxious or whatever about trying to use the new version.
Right. Yeah. And do you find yourself like changing the apps that you use or the software that you use because they have done something that no longer works for you?
For
Kylie?
me, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, I had a subscription with the Daily Telegraph, and I usually used it online, but they changed the online look and feel. So I downloaded their app, and I couldn't navigate it with large text, so I just abandoned them, and I moved on. So then I started relying on ABC, obviously, for their news channel, SBS, The Guardian. And I just read all the free ones now because it's strange, but the free ones have better accessibility. And, if you pay for something, you think that it's going to have good accessibility, but no, it wasn't the case.
Right. Scott?
Yeah, I'm definitely the same way. Abandoning something because it's become inaccessible for me it's almost like cutting off a limb. You've become so used to using something, it becomes part of your everyday, and then all of a sudden it's changed. It's seriously like losing a finger or something like that. Yeah, it's gone. There's nothing you can do about it. You have to find another way of getting through and doing what you wanted to do. If you can do that, great. But, there can even be like a mourning period of crap. I can't use this site anymore. It's how I did A, B, and C. Can I do it, C, D, and E way now? No. Well, then bugger. I'm going to have to get sighted assistance to help me with it. So yeah, it's frustrating as all hell, but sometimes you do have to change your systems or just unfortunately let some things go.
Yeah, yeah. And in considering like the three kind of sets of videos that you made, comparing them, the accessibility settings on a device, accessing iView, and shopping for a loaf of bread at Coles, were there any things that surprised you, that stood out to you as, wow, I didn't expect that, or either positive or negative? Scott, would you like to start that one?
Yeah. I found the Coles experience to be very, very good. Because when it comes to shopping, I would like a lot of information. And it was giving me a lot of information. It was giving me the price of the item, whether it was on sale or whether it was an everyday deal. It gave me, later on, it gives you nutritional information. It gives you the price per 100 grams, stuff like that, so you can compare and contrast. For some people, after a time, that much information could become bothersome. It could become too much of a good thing. But for me, I found it to be a very nice surprise. And the same with iView, with their most recent updates, having that information that, the entire show has audio description, or as I said, some say that some have audio description. It gives me that autonomy and choice and agency to be able to decide, well, okay, I'll watch this, I'll give this show a shot because I know all the episodes are going to be described. Oh, no, wait a minute, this one says only a few are audio described. I might wait until they do the entire run before I give it a shot. So that sort of, critical extra information is really good.
What about you, Kylie? Any particular thoughts on those?
Yeah, so probably the biggest thing that surprised me was when I hit that bot blocker. I just didn't expect it. And then I'm like, well, now what do I do? So that was a big surprise. But like I said, I hadn't really used the Coles website before, and it was very accessible in general. So I was surprised at how easy it was for me to do it with voice control. Usually what I find is that when you're using voice access, when you're using voice access and voice control, if everything works for the screen readers that you're testing with, and if everything works with the keyboard only, doesn't mean that it's going to work with voice control, especially with using iOS. So I did have a bit of a dabble afterwards, and I was surprised how well some of them did work.
Right.
Breath of fresh air.
Yeah. And do you think that voice control is something that more people will start using, not necessarily because they have to, but because it's a convenient way to access those devices?
I I know that I found it very useful. So I have a Samsung device. It comes with Bixby, and Bixby is horrid. I can't stand the
Right.
thing. But actually being able to do that, I find it it's very useful. Like if you're using your phone to look through a recipe, you're covered in flour. You don't want to be playing with your phone right then. So a lot of people probably won't necessarily use these versions in the general public that, it'll usually be refined to people that do need it. I would say because people have gotten so used to saying, okay, Google, and I hope I don't set off everyone's tech, so apologies, but people will say, okay, Google, or Siri, Google X, or, Alexa, tell me what's going on. So those ones have become more common, but they don't have all of the features that you would need if you were always using voice control.
Right, right. And Scott, do you think the same thing about the people using VoiceOver, even though they might be sighted?
Um, I've come to realize recently that VoiceOver is more of an asset for some people than even I've given it credit for in the 10 plus years that I've been using iOS devices. I have made a friend recently who's experiences cognitive issues, processing issues. And for her, every now and then she likes to tap voiceover on and listen to the information that's on the screen rather than trying to look at it because she can experience a sensory overload. And to her, listening to something can soothe those frayed edges and help her to assimilate information in a better way. So really these days, and also now because I'm getting into the video game accessibility space, I'm learning that voiceover and audio description and things like that are of benefit to more than just people with vision impairments. So I now say to anyone, for God's sake, give it a go. You never know if
Yeah.
it might end up being a useful, utility for you. If it doesn't work, fine. If it works for you, then hey, we've done something good.
Yeah, yeah. In the same way as a lot of people now, everything they watch, they have captions on.
Mm.
Are there any final comments that you each would like to make about your experience making these videos and what impressions they left with you? Kylie.
Yeah, I found making the videos really good. It really focused me on, what I'm doing and how you do it and what this means to people. I haven't seen many videos at all, and you can't really get live demonstrations of people using voice access or voice control. Because if you try and join a meeting and do it live, your speaker, your microphone is already being used by Zoom, for example. So you have no choice but to record it. So I found that extremely useful. I was surprised that things went mostly well. So what you won't see on the video is I have problems with my hands these days. We're still figuring out what's going on. And when you're using TalkBack, which is the screen reader on Android, to change how you're navigating, and I like to do shortcuts. So I'm going to navigate by controls, or I'm going to navigate by headings. And it used to be really easy. I'd do a 3-finger swipe and then I could change how I was going through it. I can't do that anymore. So I found that this really did stretch me with some of the shortcuts I would have used and made it, a lot longer process to potentially go and check something out. With iOS, I can still use their version of it because they use a rotor. And so you put 2 fingers on the screen and you rotate them in different directions. And that I can do, but 3 fingers together at the moment, they just shake too much. So yeah, that was probably my big takeaway of, just how even something that is accessible and you've been using forever, your circumstances can change and make things a bit more challenging.
Mm. And what about you, Scott?
Oh, a couple of things that really stuck out for me. It really brought me back to my early days working with iOS devices, putting the sounds back on because I don't have sounds on my phone. I have it switched off by default because, after a while I found them to be a little bit frustrating and, interfered with my work. So bringing it right back to those basic fundamental first steps that everyone takes when they're learning to use these devices, I thought was really quite nifty and really gave me a sense of perspective. Because in the decade or so that I've been using these devices, I've become, quite proficient to advanced in how I use them, and bringing it back to showing how they work from the very start reminded me of just how far we've all come in the accessibility space, and remembering that you know, in life, 1 in 3 people are going to experience disability at some stage in their life. So someone can be perfectly healthy one day and have a disability the next, which completely changes the way that they deal with the world and even how the world deals with them. And being able to show people that these accessibility features are out there, are very simple to use once you get the hang of them, I think is a really great thing. And as Kylie said, being able to create these videos and show people how these things work at the most macro level is really fantastic, because it's something you really can't do outside usually of a one-on-one encounter with somebody.
Yeah, that's great. Look, we
Ricky,
have actually.
Just before we go, I'd like to loop back to that first question. I know that Bree's provided some details there. I need to get this information out. So a lot of people don't realize that you can actually test web on mobile. You can use the plugins that work in Chrome. So Chrome on mobile doesn't allow you to install plugins. It's a problem. If you download Kiwi browser, it allows you to install most Chrome plugins, and you can use it on your phone. So if you're testing web and you want to test in a browser on mobile and see exactly what's there, and there's a lot of places that do this. They actually create separate web pages for mobile. They don't just create it as a separate view. So if you're predominantly working on your mobile, you want to do your testing there, download Kiwi browser and look into it, because it's really, really useful when it does come to mobile testing. I know the question was probably about mobile apps, but like I said, I'm a huge fan of Kiwi browser, and I just want people to know that it does exist and give them another option.
Yeah, good. Look, I know Bree has a couple of more things she wants to say before we wrap up, and we're at the end of our time. But I want to thank you both for creating these videos. They're absolutely fantastic. We're going to make them available to people publicly through the YouTube channel. But I especially want to thank you for the effort you've put in. The results are absolutely fantastic, and I hope we can do more of it. Thank you both.
Thank you very much, guys. It's been great.
Yeah, look, thank you, Kylie and Scott, always. And Ricky, great moderating. Lots of questions came through, which were really cool. We will put some more links on our website that have come through from this session. It's interestingly enough, our November session is on accessibility testing, and we have a couple of experts. Particularly Gian is moderating that. She knows about mobile testing, so come and ask some more questions about mobile testing there as well. Maybe we need a whole topic on that one. We'll come back to that, but the more I know about it is that the way that they're developing their apps is just try not to customize it too much. They do have such amazing accessibility features in these devices that customizing can break them. So the more that you use whatever is available in the device, the better, and give feedback to those mobile companies, Android and iOS or whoever, whatever else you're using, give feedback to them on that you want to improve that as well. Look, thank you so much. Another wonderful session. It's been great to do this as part of Get Online Week. We did get a little bit of funding to do those videos. Support Aussie Way. It helps us to make more of these. Join or subscribe to the newsletter as well. And please, keep an eye out for the rest of these sessions this year. We're going to have another one in December on what's happening in the legislation space globally. The European Union has brought out an accessibility act, and that in itself is going to be enforced mid next year. And what's that impact going to be on Australia? Legislation changes have happened in the US as well, and we're going to have someone from the Australian government to share what's happening in Australia as policy. So please share on your socials about our event. And again, thank you again. We'll leave it there. We will be in touch with some more news through our newsletter. Thank you, everyone.